Could the Texas Longhorns have 4 players selected in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft? One mock drafter thinks so. We'll tell you who it is and where he has the Horns going next on Locked On Longhorns. Intro!
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You were locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin native, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell your Longhorn friends about Locked On, your team every day. We'll have some sound from Steve Sarkisian a little bit later in today's show. We'll also recap Texas baseball's huge win over Houston Christian before we wrap things up. But first, some NFL draft conversation as we are just 15 days away from the start of the 2025 draft in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And draft weekend should be a lot of fun for Texas fans this year. The Longhorns had 14 players invited to the Combine back in February. There's a chance that the Horns flirt with Georgia's record of 15 players drafted in a single draft. The Bulldogs did that back in 2022. Texas could get there this year. Obviously, all 15 of those guys aren't going to go on night one, but there will be multiple Texas players selected in the first round of the NFL draft. That we do know. Most of the mock drafts that I've seen over the last few weeks have 3 Longhorns going in round 1. But Chad Reuter from NFL.com has 4 Longhorns going in round 1. I feel like we need LeBron James to hit us with the not 2, not 3. He's got 4 Texas players going in the first round of his most recent mock draft that was released earlier this week. The first 3 names probably won't surprise you. Reuter has Kelvin Banks going 13th overall to Arizona in a proposed trade. The Cardinals don't currently own that pick, but he has some wheeling and dealing in his mock, and he has Arizona ending up with the Texas left tackle at 13. He's got Jahdae Barron going 16th overall to Miami, and Chad Reuter also has Matthew Golden going 27th to Buffalo in another proposed trade. Boy, that would be a pretty good pick right there for Buffalo and a pretty good landing spot for Matthew Golden, getting to go play with one of the best quarterbacks in football with a team that perennially competes for championships. So that's Chad Reuter's mock draft for those 3. Again, most mocks out there have those 3 guys going somewhere on night 1. I've seen Kelvin Banks going as high as 4th overall to New England. I've seen Matthew Golden going much higher in some of these mocks, including going 12th overall to the Dallas Cowboys, which I think would be a great fit and a great pickup for the Cowboys. I've seen Jahdae Barron going as high as 6th to the Vegas Raiders. So there's a lot of variation with those 3 guys. But again, the point is all 3 of those names, Banks, Golden, and Barron, they are more than likely getting picked next Thursday in the first round. So who's the 4th? Right? Those 3 guys feel like they're pretty close to locks right now, 8 days out. But who is that 4th name that Chad Reuter thinks is going on night 1? Well, he's got the LA Rams trading back into the very end of the first round. I mean, pick number 32, trading with the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. That still hurts to say. He's got the Rams trading up to take wide receiver Isaiah Bond. Here's the brief description you get from Chad Reuter. Quotes, Matthew Stafford can never have too many targets. Bond splits time in the slot with Tutu Atwell, while Devontae Adams bedevils secondaries outside, end quote. Bedevils, not a word that you hear very often. Don't forget about Puka Nacua, by the way. He is still there in Los Angeles as well. So how about that? Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, Tutu Atwell, and Isaiah Bond with Matthew Stafford, the future Hall of Famer, slinging the rock. That'd be a pretty tough offense to stop. But that's interesting, right? Could Isaiah Bond go in the first round? He didn't have a great season at Texas. But remember, at this time last year, there were a lot of people projecting Isaiah Bond to be a first rounder in this year's NFL draft. Again, I think his stock dipped a little bit because of, some of the inconsistency. He obviously dealt with an ankle injury that he suffered against Oklahoma and then re-aggravated in the SEC championship against Georgia. I don't think he was really ever 100% for like the last 2/3 of the 2024 season. So I think that contributes to the lack of production and some of the numbers, and again, some of the inconsistencies that we saw from Isaiah Bond during his 1 year in Austin. But again, people were really high on this guy at this time last year, and speed kills. I mean, we know Isaiah Bond is fast as hell. He ran a 4.39 at the combine, didn't quite flirt with breaking Xavier Worthy's record. He was very optimistic and confident that he was going to flirt with that 4.21. Didn't quite happen, but still, 4.39 is very fast. Isaiah Bond actually bettered that time at the Texas Pro Day a few weeks ago, where he ran closer to a 4.34, 4.35. He put up some very good numbers during his time at Alabama. He's got that elite speed, and we've seen Texas and Alabama receivers, a.k.a. Steve Sarkisian guys, go pretty high off the board in recent years. I think a lot of NFL people trust Steve Sarkisian coached guys because Sark runs a very pro-style offense that has a lot of elements that you see on Sundays, and his offense is pretty similar to guys like Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan and some of the other elite offensive minds in the sports. So I think teams will sometimes give Texas guys or Steve Sarkisian guys the benefit of the doubt, especially if they're a part of the passing game, because we know that that is Steve Sarkisian's bread and butter. So, look, could it happen? Could Isaiah Bond go in round one? I think it could. I think the chances are pretty slim. I'd put them at like 5% right now. I mean, if you're asking me, if I'm an NFL GM, would I spend a first-round pick on Isaiah Bond? I probably wouldn't. I'm too worried about how he played following the injury. We're talking about a guy who's a bit frail at 180 pounds. At least that's what he weighed in at the combine. You know, I wonder if he can handle press coverage for more physical corners in the NFL. And again, I wonder about his body holding up over the course of a full 17-game season and potentially a postseason as well. He couldn't hold up over the last 16-game season that he played at Texas. And then, a guy who relies so much on his speed. He had a minor ankle injury, and he wasn't the same player after that. It's tough to get through a full NFL season at 100%. So can Isaiah Bond play through some pain? Those are all questions that I would have. He only has 99 career catches in college, only had one 100-plus yard game in his career. I had to double-check that stat. Somehow that's true. So, again, I have some questions about Isaiah Bond. Now, would I take him in round 3? Absolutely. If I'm in need of a receiver and, I don't need a number 1, would I take a chance on Isaiah Bond at some point in the draft? Of course, because, again, speed kills, and that guy is fast as hell. He's got pretty good hands. He's a pretty good route runner. There's a lot to like about what Isaiah Bond brings to the table. But first round, I think that's too rich for me. The good news for Isaiah Bond, well, it only takes one team to fall in love with you. And I'm not one of those teams making any selections here. So I don't think he will end up going. Again, I'll put it at about a 5% chance, but we will see what happens on draft night next Thursday. My question to y'all, and if you're watching on YouTube, number one, thank you. Thank you to everybody tuning in today. Always appreciate it. But leave a comment below. If it's not Isaiah Bond, who's the 4th Longhorn off the board in round 1, who will it be? Are there any other Texas players you think even have a chance to hear their name called next Thursday night? I'm trying to think of the other guys that could even be in the mix. Quinn Ewers, probably not. Sometimes teams get desperate for quarterbacks and they end up overdrafting those guys. Jaden Blue, I don't think goes there. Cam Williams, I don't think ends up in round 1. Love Andrew Makuba as a prospect. Love what he did at Texas. Same thing with Gunnar Helm. I don't think anybody else ends up going in round 1. And look, if Texas has 3 selected next Thursday, that's a huge win. That'll be the first time since 1980 that the Longhorns have had 3 players selected in the first round of an NFL draft. So clearly a sign that things are going in the right direction and guys are getting developed here at Texas. So I won't complain about that. And that's also a great recruiting tool that Steve Sarkisian can use. It's like, look, we just had 3 guys go in the first round. That's more than pretty much any other school in America. You want to play here. If Texas gets to 4, it goes without saying that would be even better. I think the number's 3. Again, I think Banks, Barron, and Golden are all locks. The question is when they go, not if they go in round 1. But I'll be curious to see if a team falls in love with Isaiah Bond's speed, or does someone take a shot at Quinn Ewers or Jaden Blue or Makuba or any of those other names, or maybe somebody I didn't mention. It'll be fascinating to watch next Thursday. Again, would love to hear from y'all below your thoughts on whether or not you believe IB will go in round 1 or who else could go from Texas next Thursday. By the way, if you're curious, the record for most first-round picks from a single school in a single year is 6. It's been done twice by Miami back in 2004, and by Alabama in 2021 after they won the 2020 national championship with Steve Sarkisian, of course, as the offensive coordinator. Still, 4 would be impressive. 3 would be impressive. Neither of those get done all that often, but Texas won't flirt with that record this year. All right, let's shift gears here. Let's let you hear from Steve Sarkisian. More from his Tuesday press conference. How about Sark talking about the running backs? Christian Clark is healthy. Trey Wisner continues to improve. And Jarrett Gibson is ready to take the next step. We'll let you hear from the coach next, right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word from our friends at Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. That's Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order all of the products you need online. Their website is super easy to use, and it's packed with helpful resources and all of the latest info to help you get the job done and done right. Their inventory has more than 200,000 parts to choose from 400 of the top brands. So you're going to find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. And if you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you're always going to talk to a real person. No computer, no bot, no AI. You will get help from a real person. And their free Trademaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it is your turn. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. And how about this? If you use the promo code SH5, you're going to get 5% off your first order over there at supplyhouse.com. Thanks to them for sponsoring today's episode. Welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. More from Coach Sark's Tuesday presser. We had a couple of cuts in yesterday's episode. We'll play a few more throughout the course of the week as well. But Steve Sarkisian was asked about the running back position. Of course, the Longhorns lost 2 running backs for the season during fall camp last year. C.J. Baxter tore a few different CLs in his knee. Christian Clark tore up his Achilles. And the Longhorns were pretty shorthanded at that spot in 2024. It doesn't sound like that's going to be the case in 2025. Here's Sark with a lengthy discussion about the Longhorn backfield.
I'll start with Christian. I'm super impressed. You know, he anytime you have a significant injury like that and you miss an entire season, you know, you're always kind of monitoring what are they going to look like when they really start to come back. And I could feel it in winter workouts. I mean, he was running a way where it was like I don't know what ahead of schedule is anymore. Science is pretty incredible. And as practice has started, you know, he looks in tremendous shape. He's right back to having great balance and body control, which is something that we identified in the recruiting process. He's got really good, you know, change of direction, ability to get to top end speed quickly. So we're very pleased with where he's at. Trey Wisner's had a great spring. I mean, he is the real Energizer bunny on offense. He provides the spark, the juice, the energy, but yet he's making really competitive, tough plays. He looks really good. He's playing physical, and Jarrett Gibson's had a good spring so far as well. And then you flipped it to the 2 young guys in James Simon and Ricky Stewart. You really see the flashes, and James has got a natural feel, really good body lean, balance and body control, great hands out of the backfield. And Ricky maybe was a little behind early, but the moment we put the pads on and you start to see him run, you see the burst, you see the acceleration. So it's a quality room. All the while, we know we still have C4 coming back, you know. So it's a good room for us. As everybody here knows, we value the running back immensely, and we're fortunate to have a good room there.
There you go. Steve Sarkisian, again, with a lengthy response talking about the Texas running back room. And there's a lot to talk about, and it is a very deep and talented group. We'll kind of go in order, at least in the order that Steve Sarkisian went in with his answer. Man, Christian Clark, what a story. Not even 8 months removed from a torn Achilles, which is a brutally tough injury. And it was a full tear, too, for Christian Clark. There's partial tears. There's hairline fractures. No, this was a full tear of the Achilles for Christian Clark. And golly, 30, 40, 50 years ago, that's an injury that would have ended somebody's career. And then again, in 8 months, Christian Clark is back on the field. I kind of thought he'd be like C.J. Baxter, where No, Texas would hold him out for the spring, kind of slow play him just to make sure that everything was healing correctly. And there's no need to rush him back for spring football. Let's just make sure he's good to go for fall camp and obviously for the regular season. But I don't know if it's a medical miracle or what. Christian Clark, and give him a lot of credit for clearly doing whatever he needed to do during the rehab process. He is back, and it sounds like he's going full speed. And he himself tweeted out a picture a week or two ago from spring practice. No brace, no pad, no guard, no wrap, nothing. I mean, he looks as good as new. That's a remarkable story. And Christian Clark was compared to Bijan Robinson by former Texas running backs coach Tashard Choice. Obviously, a lofty comparison. Christian Clark, a four-star, not as highly touted of a recruit coming out of high school, but Christian Clark also from Arizona, and a guy who Tashard Choice thought very highly of. In high school, he was a guy who was a very good runner, but also a very good receiving threat out of the backfield as well. I don't know what to expect from Christian Clark, but again, the fact that he's on the field right now is big time, and that's going to give him a much better chance of actually contributing when we get to the regular season this fall. Hopefully, Christian Clark can be a nice weapon for Texas this year. Quintravion Wisner, Sark called him Trey. Are we dropping Quintravion? Are we back to Trey? I don't even know what to call him anymore. Of course, he was the leading runner for Texas last season, coming off the 1,000-yard season. Went from 12 carries and 73 yards in 2023 to 226 carries for 1,064 this past season. The question is, what will he do for an encore? And another question is, will he be the starter in week one? I think he will be. But remember, C.J. Baxter started over Jonathan Brooks in his first game as a true freshman back in 2023. The coaching staff got that one wrong because Jay Brooks ended up as one of the best running backs in the nation and the first running back off the board in last year's NFL draft. But I say that to say that the coaches really think highly of C.J. Baxter. Now, coming off a torn-up knee, does that impact anything? Again, C.J. Baxter not out there for the spring. I assume he'll be 100% by the time we get to fall camp. But did Quintravion Wisner do enough last year to guarantee his spot as the number one running back for this team? Or does C.J. Baxter, who was the starter in each of the last two seasons, get the nod because of, again, what he did before the injury? And of course, C.J. Baxter was the number one running back recruit in the country the same year that Quintravion Wisner was recruited out of DeSoto High School. So I don't know what that's going to look like. If you ask me right now, I would think Trey Wisner is going to be your starter and he'll get the bulk of the carries early on. But that's obviously a storyline to monitor as we move forward. Trey Wisner, again, what a godsend last year with all of the injuries that Texas had in the running back room and with some of the fumbling issues from Jaden Blue. Wisner playing the way that he did, being as reliable as he was massively important to the success of this 2024 team. Put on a little bit of weight, was listed at 200 pounds last year. It sounds like he's closer to 210. Will hopefully help in those short yardage situations and will hopefully ensure that he could stay on the field over the course of another long season. I'm excited to see what he does for an encore and love to hear that he continues to take strides. And then Jarrett Gibson. I think a lot of Texas fans were a bit worried that Gibson was going to enter the portal, right? Because Wisner's coming back and Baxter is coming back from injury, and you've got James Simon and Ricky Stewart coming in, and Christian Clark is back as well. Like, is there enough space for Jarrett Gibson? Would he leave? He decides to stay, and I think that's a great thing. I wonder what his role is going to be. He was kind of RB3 last year, did pretty well, almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, was used a lot in short yardage and goal line types of situations. Is he that guy again? Does C.J. Baxter take over that role when he comes back? Quintravion Wisner, we just talked about him putting on weight. What happens with Jarrett Gibson? Another guy who was very highly graded on the recruiting trail. I mean, Texas has a lot of talent in that running back room. And again, they didn't have depth last year. Knock on wood, guys stay healthy. They've got some depth there this year. So how the carry distribution is split is something I'm very interested in seeing. But I'm very excited to hear about how these running backs are progressing. And again, when C.J. Baxter comes back, this is about as deep as any tailback room in all of college football. We know how important that position is to the success of a Steve Sarkisian offense. He's had a 1,000-yard rusher in the last, 13, 14 years as a head coach or offensive coordinator. A lot of people know him as the deep shot, air it out kind of coach. But if you really watch him and really watch this team, you know the run game is such a staple in everything that Steve Sarkisian wants to do. Texas needs to have a really good run game again this season, and hopefully they will with all of the guys that they have. All right, we'll let you hear more from Steve Sarkisian in tomorrow's episode, but we've got one segment to go today. By the way, comment below with your thoughts on the running back room and whether or not you think Trey Wisner is going to be this team's RB1 in 2025. We'll shift gears, excuse me. I'm not calling anybody a hoe. Sorry about that. We will shift gears and talk a little Texas baseball. No midweek slip up for the Longhorns last night as Texas took care of business against Houston Christian. We will recap the game, and I'll tell you why last night was huge for one very, very important Longhorn bat. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Longhorns. Welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Texas baseball had no problem with Houston Christian at the Dish last night. Of course, the Longhorns have slipped up in a couple of midweek games this season, losing to UTSA a few weeks ago, losing to Texas State last week. No repeat of bad news for Texas yesterday. 12-2, the final score. The Longhorns needing only 7 innings to run rule the Huskies of Houston Christian, formerly known as Houston Baptist. The Horns did most of their work early, 6 runs in the second, 3 more in the third. And here's the good news that I teased. Ethan Mendoza, the leadoff hitter, really struggled last week. He was 2 for 17 at the plate. He struggled in the loss to Texas State. He struggled in the series against Georgia, even though Texas swept the Bulldogs in what was the biggest series that Texas has played in years. Ethan Mendoza did not have his best stuff. And his batting average dropped from 392 to 351 with the 4 games that Texas played last week. Last night, he goes 3 of 5 and has 5 RBIs for Texas, batting at the top of the Longhorn order. A couple of 2 RBI doubles and had an RBI single as well. And he's going to be hugely important to Texas's chances to win an SEC championship, but also to make a deep run in the postseason as well. He's been great coming in from Arizona State in year 1. Finding a reliable leadoff man is huge. It was a great move by Jim Schlossnagle to put him up at the top of the order because he's been great. But he became more important once the Max Ballou injury happened. And we know Ballou is out for at least the remainder of the regular season. The Big 12 Player of the Year last year, a preseason All-American this year. Like, that's a huge bat who was protecting Ethan Mendoza in the number 2 spot before he got hurt. Now he's no longer a part of things. So all of the other sticks, we talked about this once the Ballou injury happened. Guys like Jalen Flores and Will Gasparino and Rylan Galvan, everybody else needed to step up to replace some of the production that this offense is losing without Ballou in the lineup. Ethan Mendoza is one of those guys as well. In the first few games without Ballou behind him, not great, but last night, very great. And he raised his batting average up 10 points last night alone. So hitting 361 on the year. Again, he has been a godsend for this Texas baseball team this year. Great find by Jim Schlossnagle. And the Horns are going to need him to look more like the guy we saw last night and less like the guy we saw last week for Texas to win what is a very, very talented SEC. And, of course, hopefully make a deep run to Omaha as well. Kimball Schuessler, give him a shout-out. He hit the only homer of the game for the Horns, a solo shot in the third. Texas made the most of its opportunities. The Longhorns 5 for 11 with runners in scoring position. The pitching got the job done. Very short start for Cade Bing on the bump. Went just an inning and a third. Didn't give up a hit, gave up just 1 walk. Jason Flores came in and pitched, and then the Longhorns got to use 3 of their, quote-unquote, lesser relievers, and they got 3 scoreless innings out of Rarick and Moffitt and Saunier, so that's great. Didn't have to use any of your best arms, get to give those guys a few extra days off before another SEC conference series, and you were still able to win against a pretty good Houston Christian team. Like, I'm not going to sit here and compare them to anybody in the SEC, but Houston Christian is in first place in the Southland Conference right now. They were 20-10 on the year going into last night. So it's not a horrible team that you play. That might be a team that makes it to the NCAA tournament this year. To beat them is one thing, but to run rule them by a final score of 12-2, that's another thing, especially considering some of the recent midweek struggles that this team has had. So don't have to worry about that last night. Nice, easy win for Texas baseball. That's what you want to see in these Tuesday night games. The Longhorns now 27-4 on the year. It's the best start for Texas since 2004. That season ended in Omaha. The Longhorns unfortunately finished runners-up in the College World Series that year. But, hey, I think any Texas fan would take a trip to Omaha. I mean, the bar is raised. The expectations are a lot different now. I think the goal for me for this Texas baseball team going into the season was like, man, if you make it to a super regional, that's a great year one for Jim Schlossnagle. I know Texas baseball, the history, you want to get to Omaha every single season, but with all of the turnover on the staff and on the roster, if you're able to find your way to a super regional, basically the Sweet 16 of college baseball, then it'd be hard to call that a failure. But now that the Horns are number 2 in the country and tied for first place in the SEC here on April 9th, feels like the bar has been raised. And now we feel like this is a team that has a shot to be making it to TD Ameritrade Park this summer. Nice win last night for the Horns. Texas back at it this Friday in Lexington to take on the Kentucky Wildcats. That's going to do it for today's episode. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Thank you so much for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. For your next listen, be sure to check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. As your favorite Longhorns and college football players get ready for the next level, you can find all of the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Maybe you can hear those guys talking about the potential of 4 Horns going in round 1. Tomorrow we'll have more sound from Steve Sarkisian. We'll have a little bit more Texas basketball talk as well. And, Rory Harmon coming back for the Texas women's basketball team. We might dive into that a little bit more during tomorrow's show as well. Always a lot going on the 40 acres. Again, appreciate y'all for tuning in today. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and rate. And thanks again for tuning in. Horns up, mic's off. We'll see y'all next time. This is Locked On Longhorns.